Project Bill here, and before we begin, just know there is a difference between a manifestation quirk and a creation quirk. And the difference that manifested things can be supernatural but temporary, and while creation things are in scientific BS but permanent when created. And now that I've given you a lesson which will help you make your own what if, let's begin. What if Stoic Deku had a perfect manifestation quirk? And we start this in Japan, Musatafa, and to a 15-year-old Izuku Midoriya as he was in a train and listening to music and waiting to be taken to Musatafa where Ue Hai is, until some people in the train screamed as there were some villains in the train threatening people, and Izuku knew he could defeat these low-level villains, and he probably should, because talking to himself just wastes time. Izuku thought to himself as he got in front of the people seeing the villains holding hostage, unfortunately, the person who runs the train and a few passengers, and the villains asking for some son of money and shit, and telling everyone to stay back. But Izuku did not, as he went in the front and, "Hey kid, stay or else these people get it," the villain with some kind of shark quirk said, but Izuku did not care, as he said, "Let them go and you won't get hurt." "Huh, us getting hurt? Kid, go away or else you're going to get it," another villain said, until Izuku in a blink of eye got in front of him and then backhanded him onto the floor and knocking him out instantly as he activated a switch on his belt as a defeating sound wave about, as the villains passed out instantly from the sound but no one else got hurt, as the only one that was left was the shark villain, as he stressed out after seeing all of his comrades being defeated so easily, as he grabbed the train runner from the handle threatening his life, until the train started to fell over from the sudden jolt. And Izuku feeling that, Izuku manifested a gun and shot the shark villain in the head for an instant kill, as he jumped out of the train through the small window and created titanium arms that burst out of the ground, holding the train from moving and falling over at the same time. While the train was still moving but stopped from those titanium-shaped arms, as Izuku quickly set the train back in the right position, as the villains were incapacitated and everyone else were fine, he guessed, as the train restarted and started going on, as Izuku jumped back in only to see the shocked faces of the passengers and train runner, as he ignored them and went back in the train to grab his bag, as he ignored the confused looks and relieved looks on the passengers and went back in the control room, and he was about to jump out of the train again until, "Hey, are you a hero?" the train runner said quickly while the passengers who there watched on, but Izuku did not care to answer but did. "No, but don't thank me," Izuku replied quickly, jumping out of the broken window and landed on the ground softly with some cushioning from his manifestation quirk creation's soft paddings, as now he was on the ground, as he decided wasting time being normal is not helping, as he manifested a portal in front of him, which he walked through, and now he was in front of the Ue Hai entrance exam, as he ignored the extremely shocked faces of his maybe competitors who just saw him come here through a portal. But Izuku did not care, as he went in the entrance exam and looked around, seeing many faces, and a familiar one. And this person is Katsuki Bakugo, his childhood friend who is an asshole, explosive, loud, annoying, bratty, self-centered, and especially egoistic. And because of all of these shitty traits in Bakugo, Izuku mostly ignored him until Bakugo came on his ass of knowing what his quirk was when they were kids, and Izuku simply answered manifestation quirk. But that did not satisfy Bakugo, unsurprisingly, because when he was growing up, Bakugo was always a pain in everyone's asses, always because of his talk of being the #1 hero and being the big dog or some shit, and basically bullying anyone who he believed will get in his way. And well, basically summing it all up, Bakugo is just annoying, and the fact that he always says he will become the #1 hero is absolute bullshit, because the things that he has been doing is heroically jack shit in anyone's eyes, Izuku thought to himself, as he ignored Bakugo and went in front to take a seat, as the written test started, and Izuku answered the questions easily because of his time of studying on about anything as much as he can just in case, which to most would be deemed as a waste of time, because some things are not useful, but to Izuku some things can be useful, but also useless depending on how it's used and where it's used. And so, Izuku answered all the questions, and then the written exam ended, as the practical or robot portion was going to start. "What's up, listeners? Can I get a hey?" Present Mike loudly said throughout the whole room, but no one responded. "That's coolio," Present Mike continued. "Here's how it's going to go. Each of you are going to be sent to one of 7 testing locations and you'll have 10 minutes to take on 3 different kinds of robot villains. Use your quirks however you want. Contestant, "May I ask a question?" a person with a stern voice said. "Go ahead," Present Mike said. On the handout, there are no less than 4 robots running around the city. If this is a printing mistake, it is one unfitting of the UA institution, Ida said sternly. Kid, I was getting there now. Calm down, yo, Present Mike said, as Ida went back in his seat satisfied, as Present finished the rest of his explanation on how the robot point system works and to ignore the 0 pointer if they come across it. And after that ended, everyone started getting ready, as Izuku started walking to the front for a slight advantage until Iida came in way, stating that he cannot allow Izuku to distract that girl in the front, who we know as Ochako, and Izuku, hearing that, was about to say something until Iida interrupted him again, stating that it is very unprofessional for Izuku to do something. Izuku slapped Iida's face, shutting him up. First off, don't interrupt someone. Second, I was trying to get in the front and was not trying to distract that random girl. And third, learn from this to not be annoying. Now what do you have to say? Izuku said as Iida stood frozen, his hand instinctively clutching his reddening cheek as he blinked rapidly, his indignation becoming into genuine shock and realization of his own mistake. I apologize, Iida stammered, this time his voice not being as robotic as it should be. I made an unfounded assumption and acted with a lack of decorum by interrupting you. My desire for order led to me create disorder. It was most unheroic of me, Iida said, apologizing. Good, and give people time to talk and sometimes don't if needed, and now move aside, please, Izuku said, and Iida did so as Izuku walked into the front to Sector B, where he is supposed, as everyone waited until begin, Present Mike said, and everyone was confused because there was no go or ready, except Izuku who rushed in, as the other contestants were confused, stating that he should not go. No kids, what he is doing right, don't expect any readying, just go, 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 Present Mike said, and everyone else straight went in, but in this 20-second delay, Izuku already destroyed 4 3-pointer robots by basically creating a portal below the robots and 100 feet away, and you can imagine the rest. And so, Izuku kept doing this because simplicity is sometimes best, and Izuku is being simple with his attacks, as in the next 3 minutes, Izuku calmly and swiftly destroyed over 50 points worth of robots with this extremely simple yet good tactic, while ignoring his competitors who were barely doing as good as he was. As in the UA observation room, UA staff were checking for looking for cheaters, the injured, and potential standout students. For better and for worse, they were finding all 3 in spades. Examinee 4851 in Testing Center East just tied up 2 other examinees. Examining 9422 just sprained an ankle. Someone go pick him up. That explosive one is starting to present more of a threat to the kids than the robots. Should we tell him to cool off? One of the staff said. While in the middle of the room, Kayama Namori, aka Midnight, who some of you call wife, was searching for any interesting examinees to keep an eye on when she noticed her friend/contemporary, Shota Aizawa, aka Eraserhead, with Nezu, the principal, both intently staring at one of the screens, and Midnight sauntering over to them. She popped over to Aizawa's shoulder. Hey, what's got you both so invested in the exam? Someone catch your eye? As Aizawa's eye did not go away from the screen as they narrowed. Look at the screen for Sector B, Aizawa muttered, gesturing toward the monitor where Izuku was effortlessly folding the space beneath a 3-pointer. Most of these kids are treating this like a playground, relying on flash and noise. But this one, he isn't even breaking a sweat. He's utilizing a high-level spatial quirk with the simplicity of someone breathing. Aizawa finished, as Nezu sipped his tea, his eyes gleaming with interest. It isn't just the quirk, Kayama. Look at his timing. He moved before the countdown even registered for the others. He understands that in a real villain attack, there is no start whistle. He has 56 points in under 4 minutes, and he hasn't moved more than 50 passes from the entrance. Nezu finished, as Midnight leaned in, whistling low as she watched Izuku create a portal loop that sent a 2-pointer plummeting into the chassis of another robot. He's brutal in his simplicity, Midnight said. That's what makes him dangerous, Aizawa added. He's not here to show off. He's here to finish the task. While everyone else is fighting for the spotlight, he's treating this like a cleaning job, Aizawa finished, as we now get back to Sector B and to do Izuku, who has not let his guard down, because anything can happen, even a meteor randomly hitting him for no reason, Izuku thought to himself, as he created another portal to destroy a few more robots, as right now he was at 70 points, and Izuku did not even struggle. as he saw a three-pointer robot about to be dropped top of a few contestants who would be very injured, as Izuku rushed there, as some armor manifested on his arm as he got to the contestants before the contestants could be crushed, as he punched the three-pointer, as a shockwave came into existence, and then multiplied tenfold, as the three-pointer robot was sent into the sky. But before it could hit anyone else, Izuku created a portal above it, which landed to the ground safely without harming anyone else, as he sternly told the contestants to leave now. And the contestants did so, thankful and in awe, as the gauntlet disappeared, and Izuku went back to destroying more robots, as we now get back to the UA observation room. As the observation room was silent enough to hear a pin drop, the monitors in Sector B were filled with white noise and static for a brief split second before the high-definition cameras adjusted to the blinding light of Izuku's beam. I take it back, Midnight whispered, her
Nezu stated calmly as Aizawa was the first to find his voice, though it was grittier than usual. He sent the girl directly to the medical station. He didn't wait for a thank you, he didn't check to see if anyone was watching, and he didn't hesitate to go back to the objective. Aizawa scribbled something down on his clipboard, his pen nearly tearing the paper. He has over 70 points. He just soloed a 0-pointer in seconds, and he's treating the remaining 5 minutes like a chore he needs to finish before lunch. He's making the rest of the exam look like a joke, one of the other proctors muttered, looking at the screens of other sectors where students were still struggling with 1-pointers. The disparity in power it's not even a gap, it's an ocean. It's not just the power, Nezu corrected, his voice regaining its cheerful but sharp edge. It's the lack of ego. Most examinees with a quirk like that would be shouting their name from the rooftops. This boy is completely indifferent to the spectacle he just created. He used a beam of that magnitude because it was the most simple way to ensure the girl's safety and clear the path. Efficiency over everything. Aizawa sighed, leaning back and rubbing his tired eyes. He's going to be a headache, a logical, powerful, incredibly efficient headache. I want his files on my desk by the end of the hour, Aizawa said as we now get back to Sector B and to Izuku as he didn't acknowledge the how or the we're useless comments floating through the air. To him, their self-doubt was just as irrelevant as the 0-pointer's scrap metal. But now there were 5 minutes remaining, and these 5 minutes would count. Izuku thought to himself as he went back to destroying more 3-pointer robots for the rest of these 5 minutes with the same simple technique, because going all out on a test is not really necessary. And so Izuku went around the exam destroying robots until the 5-minute timer ended, as after Izuku heard that, he counted the amount of robots he defeated, and in these 5 minutes the robot elimination count was 176, and with the previous 70 points it's combined into 246 villain points, and then he nodded to himself, and then he created a portal and walked through it. As we now again get back to the UA staff room, as in slang terms, they were basically glazing him and shit, and talking about rescue points, and Izuku got 60 of those, and so his new total score is 306, and this was the highest in UA High's history and shit, and then Aizawa asked Nezu if he can talk to this Izuku kid, and Nezu hearing that allowed it, and so Aizawa got up and went to the door, and he opened it only for Izuku to be there. I want to talk to the principal about some matters, and don't ask if I took a sneak peek because the answer is no, and I won't waste time, so I will just say it. I live at Hosu, which is far from UA High, so I need a place to live in UA High, so can I get one or no? And your answer won't matter because I can come to UA High with my portals. And don't speak too much. This is a yes or no question, and don't say anything else, Izuku said in a cold voice as Aizawa stood frozen for a split second, and then got out of that little shock, and behind him Nezu chuckled, the sound bright and sharp in the quiet room. A direct approach. I find that quite refreshing, Izuku Midoriya. Please, come in. Shota, move aside. You're blocking the doorway. I just asked yes or no. I'm not asking for details, Izuku said calmly. Yes, Nezu replied, his black eyes twinkling with an amusement that few things could provoke. UA has staff and guest dormitories available. We can facilitate your stay starting the day orientation begins. Izuku gave a single sharp nod. He didn't offer a thank you or a smile. To him, the exchange was a completed transaction. Understood. Send the logistics and room number to my email. I'll be there at 0800 sharp on the first day. Don't bother with the physical acceptance letter. The digital notification is sufficient. As Izuku turned to leave, his gaze briefly flicked over to the monitors where his score, 306, was plastered in bold red numbers. He looked at it with the same level of interest one might give a grocery receipt. Wait, Aizawa called, as his voice regaining his usual gravelly authority. The written exam. You finished it in 20 minutes and spent the rest of the time staring at the ceiling. Why? Izuku paused at the threshold of the door, not even bothering to turn around fully. Because the questions were based on standardized curriculum and basic hero laws. Once the patterns were identified, the answers were a foregone conclusion. Sitting there for the remaining 40 minutes would have been a poor use of my cognitive resources. Staring at the ceiling allowed me to practice mental spatial mapping for the practical. You're efficient to a fault, kid, Aizawa muttered, narrowing his eyes. But being a hero isn't just about solving equations, it's about people. That girl you saved, you didn't even check if she was conscious before portaling her away. I sent her to recovery, simple and easy, that's all. And goodbye for now. Izuku opened a portal and walked through it, leaving from there and back to his apartment in Hosu City. As he manifested a bed and then laid there, and then manifested a cute girl into existence as she hugged him giggling, and this is life, Izuku thought to himself, smiling because now that he is alone, he can be free to his heart's content and lay some pipe as well, and smash something hugging him. Wink wink, my viewers, you can only dream to get this, and this is where we now jump cut to the next day. And to Izuku in the morning, waking up and demanifesting the girl. As he got out of the bed, he took a bath and brushed his teeth, getting ready, and then he put on his clothes, which are a black compression shirt and black pants, and above it manifesting normal clothes. As he looked around his apartment room, and there was nothing, because every single thing here was manifested because why buy when you don't need to? Izuku thought to himself as he opened a portal and walked through it, being in front of UA High. As he started walking in, and right on time, he received a message on his phone informing him about where he is going to stay, and if he wants, he can check out the other classes. The sender, Nezu, and Izuku read it fully as he opened a portal to his room, looking around, seeing the most basic things, and then he got out of there and portaled in front of Nezu's office as he knocked on the door, and Nezu in there said, "Enter," and Izuku just opened the door. I don't need the key and I can portal in there, and I'm going to check out how UA works like you said I am allowed to, Izuku said, looking at Nezu, and Nezu nodded, and Izuku closed the door as Nezu chuckled to himself until Izuku opened the door again. I have a few questions which you will either like or not like hearing, and you have no choice because in a few days you will hear about it, so why don't I say it now? Izuku said as he waited for Nezu's answer, and Nezu nodded, which was enough for him as he took a seat as Nezu asked what were the questions, and Izuku sighed for a second as they were alone in Nezu's office. So to bluntly put it, when I was getting to UA High via a train, a few villains attacked the train and were in there, and I saved the passengers and stopped the train from tumbling over the rails, saving at least 100 plus people and millions in property damages, but had to kill one of the villains or else those property damages and deaths would have happened. And so now tell me, what will you do with this information? Izuku said calmly and waiting. As Nezu's paws remained clasped, his expression unreadable as the silence stretched between them. Any other student would be sweating under the gaze of the world's most intelligent creature, but Izuku simply stared back, revealing nothing. Statistically speaking, Nezu began, his voice devoid of its usual high-pitched cheer, the survival rate of that train derailment without your intervention was less than 8%. The economic impact would have been felt for a decade. As for the death of the villain, Nezu paused to take a deliberate sip of tea, the Hero Public Safety Commission would call it an unfortunate necessity given the circumstances, but I call it a data point. Izuku didn't blink. I didn't ask for a lecture on economics or the commission's PR strategy. I asked what you will do. I will do nothing, Nezu replied, a sharp, toothy grin spreading across his face. In the eyes of the law, you used a quirk without a license. In the eyes of morality, you saved 100 souls. But in the eyes of UA, you demonstrated that you can make the hard choice before you even wore the uniform. If I were to report you, I would be depriving the hero world of its most efficient asset. That would be illogical. Good, Izuku said, standing up. Then we have an understanding. Logic governs the room, not sentiment. Izuku finished as he walked out of Nezu's room, and counted that there were 3 weeks remaining before UA High begin for Class 1A and his new classmates come in here. But right now, it was time to see how good UA High's facilities were and these second and third years in UA High, Izuku thought to himself as he started walking around UA High. And the facilities were impressive, but could be better, but it was good enough, right? And so Izuku kept on checking until he got to Gym Gamma, seeing a few second years struggle with some struggling with weight and others some parkour, and that was good. Pain can sometimes bring out power as long as it honed to its fullest and as long as the person is not a crazy killer, Izuku thought to himself as he walked around more until he got to Support Lab and nothing interesting was going on, so Izuku got out of there as he walked more until a girl was running from the corridor as she was about to crash into Izuku, as Izuku just calmly dodged, and before the girl could fall, he grabbed the back of her shirt, saving her from a possible head injury as he pulled her up. As this girl was Nejire, as she spun around, her long periwinkle hair swirling like a storm, her eyes wide with a mix of surprise and the hyper-energetic curiosity she was known for. She didn't look shaken by the near fall. Instead, she looked like she had just found a new toy. "Whoa, you're fast, really fast, and you didn't even look like you were trying," she chirped, hovering inches from Izuku's face. "Are you a first year?" "No, orientation hasn't started yet." "Are you a guest?" "Why are you so calm? Your heart rate didn't even spike. What's your quirk? Is it teleportation? Physical enhancement? Why are you wearing those clothes? Do they help with your power?" Izuku stared at her, his expression as flat as a stone tablet. He released her shirt, letting her settle on her own feet. "You ask too many questions." Nejire blinked, her head tilting to the side. "Efficiency? That's a funny word for a cute underclassman to use. I'm Nejire Heido, 3rd year, and you are Izuku Midoriya, and I'm busy," Izuku said calmly, already about to walk away. "Busy doing what? Exploring? I know this place better than anyone. Want a tour? I can show you the best spots to train, or where the cafeteria serves the best protein shakes, or I've already mapped the layout. The tour..."
Bakugo's face contorted, his mouth opening to unleash a verbal explosion, but the yellow sleeping bag slumped against the doorframe shifted before he could utter a word. Aizawa unzipped himself, his bloodshot eyes peering out with their usual mix of exhaustion and irritation. "Took you long enough to notice," Aizawa muttered, stepping out of the fabric cocoon. He spared a brief, calculating glance at Izuku. "And don't tell me how to run my classroom, Midoriya, though you're right, time is being wasted." Aizawa walked to the front of the podium, the class scrambling to their seats as his oppressive aura settled over the room. Bakugo remained standing for a second longer than the rest, his teeth bared at Izuku, before he clicked his tongue and sat down, kicking his chair back into place. "I'm Shota Aizawa, your homeroom teacher," the man announced, reaching into his sleeping bag and pulling out a bundle of blue gym uniforms. "It's rational to get straight to the point. Put these on and head to the grounds. We're doing a quirk apprehension test." And after that, everyone got ready and went to the training grounds. As the students filed out, the air was thick with murmurs. "A test on the first day?" a girl with pink skin asked. "What about orientation, the opening ceremony?" "If you want to be a hero, you don't have time for pleasantries," Aizawa said, his eyes scanning the group until they landed on Izuku. "Midoriya, you placed first in the entrance exam. In junior high, what was your best result for the softball throw?" "I skipped middle school halfway," Izuku said, his voice flat and devoid of any pride. Aizawa stared at him for a long moment, the silence stretching until the other students started to whisper. "Fine," Aizawa finally grunted, tossing the ball toward him. "Then we'll establish your baseline now. Step into the circle. Anything goes as long as you stay within the lines." Izuku caught the ball with a single hand, not even looking at it. The rest of the class watched, hushed. Bakugo's eyes were narrowed, his hands twitching with suppressed explosions. He wanted to see if the rumors of the 306-point record were real or just UA propaganda. As Izuku stepped into the ring, he didn't wind up his arm, he didn't brace his legs, as he created a portal and let the ball go through it, as Aizawa's detector landed at error. "The sensor can't track it once it leaves the local airspace," Izuku said, his voice a low, steady drone. "Where did you send it?" Aizawa asked, his hair beginning to drift upward, a sign of his quirk activating out of pure habit. "A random dumpster in America," Izuku replied flatly. I figured it was a more efficient disposal of the projectile than letting it crash back down and causing unnecessary property damage or a noise complaint. The silence that followed was absolute. The students of Class 1A looked at the screen, then at the boy who had just casually tossed a ball across the planet without breaking a sweat. America? Uraraka whispered, her jaw hanging open. That's thousands of miles. It's a ball throw, not a logistics exercise, Bakugo snarled, though his tremor in his voice betrayed his rage. The hell kind of baseline is that? He cheated. He followed the instructions, Aizawa countered, though his eyes remained fixed on Izuku. He used his quirk to maximize the result. That's the point of this exercise. He turned to the rest of the class, his expression darkening. There's a reason he's standing there and you're standing here. If you want to catch up, start thinking. Now, for the rest of you, if you finish last in the overall standings, I'll judge you as having no potential and expel you on the spot. A collective gasp rippled to the group. Izuku didn't react. Expulsion was a threat for those who relied on the system. For him, the system was just a series of data points to be navigated. And Izuku dog-walked on everyone because of the skill level difference between him and Class 1A, and by the time they reached the final exercises, the gap between Izuku and the rest of the class wasn't just a margin, it was a canyon. Bakugo was a silent volcano, his explosions getting louder and more desperate with every test, while the others, like the boy with the ice quirk Todoroki, watched Izuku with a growing sense of unease. As they wrapped up, Aizawa displayed the holographic rankings. 1. Izuku Midoriya. 2. Shoto Todoroki. 3. Katsuki Bakugo. The list continued down to the bottom, where the boy with the sticky hair, Mineta, was shaking like a leaf. By the way, the expulsion was a rational deception, Aizawa said, a creepy grin stretching across his face. It was to ensure you gave it your all. I knew that, Izuku stated, not looking at anyone. The paperwork required to expel a student on the first day without prior disciplinary records would be a bureaucratic nightmare for a school of this stature. It would be a poor use of UA's time. Aizawa's grin twitched. You're a real joy, Midoriya. As the class began to head back to the locker rooms, Bakugo finally snapped. He lunged forward, palms popping with lethal heat. Deku, you bastard! Stop ignoring me! Before Bakugo could get within 5 feet, a wall of blackened, reinforced steel manifested instantly from the dirt, blocking his path. Bakugo slammed into it, the impact vibrating through his teeth. You're going to kill someone if you don't get character development, Izuku said, and then he opened a portal and stepped through it, vanishing before the wall even finished de-manifesting into nothingness, as he was now back in his room in UA High, as he lay on the best, as this time he manifested a tall girl with a big JJK reference, the type of women Yuji's like, and so after the soulless yet curvy girl was created, Izuku laved some pipe and then fell asleep. And this is where we now jump cut to the 5th day in UA High as main cast was in Class 1A. Suddenly, the door was thrown open with a force that made several students jump. I am coming through the door like a normal person. All Might burst into the room, wearing his Silver Age costume, his massive cape billowing despite the lack of wind. The class erupted in awe. It's All Might, Kirishima cheered, leaning forward. He really is a teacher here. Izuku didn't cheer, he simply observed. High energy output, massive muscle mass, dramatic entrance designed to inspire confidence. Classic psychological warfare. Welcome to the most important class at UA High School, All Might boomed, marching to the podium with a stride that shook the floorboards. Think of it as Heroing 101. Here you will learn the basics of what it means to be a symbol of justice. And for our first lesson, we're diving straight into the deep end, the battle trial. Bakugo's grin was feral. Todoroki's expression sharpened. Izuku remained a statue. But you can't be heroes without the look. All Might pointed to the wall where several panels slid open to reveal numbered cases. Based on the quirk registrations and requests you sent in before school started, these were designed to fit your needs. Get changed and meet me at Ground Beta. The class filed out into the simulated city of Ground Beta. Most of the students looked flashy, armored plating, utility belts in vibrant colors. Then there was Izuku. He hadn't submitted a design. He didn't need to. He walked out onto the pavement wearing a black compression shirt and white baggy pants, which he had manifested the moment he stepped into the tunnel.
It was made of a non-reflective, high-density polymer designed for maximum mobility and zero friction. No capes, no bright colors, no hero names stitched into the fabric. "Midoriya, my boy," All Might said, looking at Izuku's minimalist attire. "Where is your costume? Did the support company fail to deliver?" "I don't outsource my equipment," Izuku said flatly. "A hero costume is a tool. My quirk allows me to adapt my tools to the specific environment. Carrying around a static outfit is a logistical disadvantage." All Might blinked, his heroic smile faltering for a fraction of a second. "I see. Very practical of you." He cleared his throat and held up a lot box. "Now, the situation is simple. A villain team will guard a nuclear weapon in a building. The hero team must either capture the villains or secure the weapon within the time limit. The teams will be decided by lots." "Question?" Izuku asked, and All Might looked at him and nodded. "Should we not start with discipline because of the strength of some of the quirks that are present, here that can be destructive and dangerous to most of the students?" Izuku, while his eyes went to Bakugo, then to Todoroki respectively. As All Might's perpetual grin tightened slightly at the edges, his blue eyes flickering with a moment of genuine consideration. The boy was right, logically at least. He looked at Bakugo, whose palms were practically smoking, and Todoroki, who stood like a silent glacier. "A valid concern, young Midoriya," All Might boomed, though his voice lacked a bit of his earlier bravado. "Safety is paramount. However, this trial is designed to test your judgment under pressure. Part of being a hero is learning to control that very destruction in a populated area. I will be monitoring everything from the booth and will stop any match that gets too out of hand." Izuku stared at him for a beat, his eyes unblinking. "I see. You're prioritizing experiential learning over foundational safety protocols. Risky, but it's your curriculum." He turned away, his black compression shirt hugging his frame as he adjusted his white baggy pants. All Might let out a forced hearty laugh, though a bead of sweat rolled down his temple. "Right, moving on. The first match will be Team A as the heroes and Team D as the villains." The lot was cast, the heroes Izuku Midoriya and Ochika Uraraka versus the villains Katsuki Bakugo and Tenya Ida, and Bakugo was basically salivating after hearing that, as he and Ida went to the bomb room while Izuku went to their designated area to wait until All Might gave the go. As Ochika asked if Izuku had a plan, and Izuku nodded and started to explain the plan, because before this day could start, Aizawa made sure to inform Izuku that he is not allowed to use his manifest any portals or a full counter to another in the test, and Izuku just listened because he knew this can be a good challenge, but right now he had to make a plan with Ochika, and he did, and so the plan was for Ochika to go from the back and sneak around while he distracts Bakugo and Ida, and Ochika agreed with this plan because she did see him save her in the entrance exam, even though she was unable to talk to him there. And so Izuku and Ochika got ready until All Might finally gave the go, and Ochika started running to the back of the building as Izuku started going up it until he heard some noises and Bakugo screaming "die" and not choosing to protect the bomb with Ida, which was a stupid thing, Izuku thought to himself, until Bakugo came down as he shot an explosion towards Izuku, which he sidestepped easily.
He turned to Uraraka. "Can you walk?" She nodded mutely. "Good, we're done here." Izuku walked past the shivering Bakugo without a second glance, leaving the symbol of peace standing in the ruins of his own lesson as portaled Ochaka away to Recovery Girl's office, while jumping down the building to find Ida still knocked out but safe, as he did the same for him as well as walked into the observation room to retrieve his belongings. The atmosphere was stifling. The other students shrank back, creating a wide path for him. They weren't just impressed, they were unsettled. They had seen a student lecture the #1 hero and treat a massive explosion like a minor atmospheric inconvenience. "Midoriya?" Kirishima started, his voice uncharacteristically quiet. That was intense. Is he actually going to be okay? Izuku stopped, his hand on the door handle. He didn't turn around. Physically, yes. Mentally, his worldview just suffered a total structural collapse. Whether he rebuilds it or remains a ruin is irrelevant to the curriculum. "That's cold, Ribbit," Asui noted, though her eyes were fixed on the charred monitors. "Logic is often perceived as cold by those who prioritize feelings over results," Izuku replied flatly before walking out. The next few hours were a whirlwind of administrative panic. All Might was reportedly in a closed-door meeting with Nezu and Aizawa. Rumors flew through the halls about Bakugo's potential expulsion, but Izuku knew better. UA was too invested in its greatest hero narrative to let a top-tier quirk like Explosion go, regardless of the user's psychiatric instability. And after a week after Izuku walked toward the school gates, he was met by a swarm of reporters. The news of the ground beta incident hadn't leaked fully, but the press was always hungry for any scrap of All Might's teaching style. And to be a little help for everything to be done faster, Izuku portaled all of the reporters to the middle of Musutafa, and then he reached Class 1A's door and stepped inside. The room was silent. Bakugo was sitting at his desk, his head bowed, his usual explosive arrogance replaced by a hollow, shell-shocked stare. Ida was heavily bandaged but present, looking at Izuku with a complex mix of gratitude and formal stiffness. Aizawa walked in, looking more tired than usual. He dropped a stack of papers on the podium. "Yesterday was a mess," Aizawa said, his eyes scanning the room until they landed on Izuku. "Decisions have been made regarding disciplinary actions, but we don't have time to dwell on it. Today we're doing something different. For today's Hero Basic Training, it'll be a class with 3 instructors, me, All Might, and 1 other person." "What are we doing?" Sero asked. "Disaster Prevention and Rescue, the USJ. Put on your costumes, or whatever Midoriya calls his clothes, and get on the bus." "Can it not wait so some things can be responsibly handled first, like those reporters almost managing to get into UA High?" Izuku said. Aizawa paused, his hand gripping the edge of the podium until his knuckles turned white. He looked at Izuku, whose expression remained a void of clinical detachment. The rest of the class watched the exchange with bated breath. After yesterday, nobody dared to interrupt when Midoriya spoke. "The security breach was handled, Midoriya," Aizawa said, his voice grating with exhaustion. "The gate's structural sensors were triggered, but the reporters you mentioned, well, they seem to have vanished into the city center. While your method of cleaning up the front gate was unconventional and legally dubious, it technically resolved the immediate bottleneck. We are moving forward because a hero doesn't wait for the perfect conditions to train." "Okay," Izuku said, and after that everyone got on the bus. The bus ride was predictably loud, though a wide berth was given to the back corner where Izuku sat. Asui, ever the observant one, turned to face him. "Midoriya-chan, I usually say what's on my mind. Your quirk, it's like a god's toy box, Ribbit, but you seem to hate it using it for anything that isn't efficient. Don't you find any joy in it?" "I use it on joy or happy things when I am alone, and truly, I have my own insecurities, but you have to guess those, because right now none of them are here because I quarteled them away," Izuku said, making a joke. "Wait, did you make a joke?" Kaminari asked, and Izuku just nodded. And after half an hour later, they arrived at the USJ. The massive dome loomed over them, a marvel of disaster simulation engineering. 13 stood at the entrance, waving a puffy white glove. After the initial greetings and 13's speech on the lethality of quirks, which Izuku actually nodded along with in rare agreement, the class stepped onto the central plaza. Suddenly, the central fountain sputtered. The air itself seemed to ripple and tear, a swirling vortex of purple and black mist expanding in the center of the facility. "Stay back," Aizawa shouted, his goggles snapping over his eyes. "Those aren't rescue targets, those are villains." As dozens of low-tier thugs stepped out of the mist, followed by a pale man covered in severed hands and a monstrous bird-like creature with its brain exposed, the class froze. "Everyone, stay behind me," Izuku said, his voice cutting through the rising panic like a knife. He didn't look scared, he looked bored, as if he had just seen the end of a movie he'd already watched. He stepped forward, his white baggy pants fluttering in the localized wind of the portal's wake. He began to manifest something, not a shield and not a chain. From the air around his hands, heavy blackened iron slabs began to form, floating in a geometric ring around him. "Aizawa-san, I assume the no portals restriction is lifted given the current breach of safety protocols," Izuku asked. Aizawa didn't even look back as he dove into the fray. "Do whatever you have to do to keep them alive, Izuku. Just don't kill them if you can help it." "Don't worry, everyone is safe,"
Izuku said, as a portal came under all of the students, sending them back to UA High. Midoriya, I told you to stay with them, Aizawa said. The most efficient way to keep them safe was to remove them from the equation entirely, Izuku replied, his voice carried by a sonic amplifier so Aizawa could hear him over the chaos. Now focus on your sector. I'll handle the heavy hitters. While in the middle of the USJ, Shigara Tomurachura scratched his neck until it bled, his eyes wide with a mixture of manic rage and genuine confusion. The NPCs, they're gone. You cheated. You're not supposed to just let them leave. He pointed a trembling finger at Izuku. Kurogiri, kill the brat. Nomu, break the eraser. The bird-like creature, the Nomu, screeched, a sound like grinding metal, and vanished in a blur of pure speed toward Aizawa, but it never reached him, as a beam of golden light was shot at the Nomu, instantly vaporizing it to nothing, as Izuku's right arm was more than damaged from that attack. That was my second strongest attack, Sunbeam, and it's literally the sun, and if it's not human, it means I can go all out, Izuku said calmly, as the golden light faded, leaving behind nothing but charred concrete and a lingering smell of ozone. Shigura Tomura froze, his hand hovering inches from his own neck. The Nomu, the bioengineered weapon designed specifically to kill the symbol of peace, was simply gone, not beaten, not pushed back, but erased from the molecular map. The Nomu, Shigura Tomura's voice was a ragged whisper. My game breaker. You just deleted my game breaker? I don't care, Izuku said, as diamond chains wrapped around Shigura Tomura, Kurogiri, and as many villains as there was in the middle of the USJ, as they were all restrained. Aizawa-san, get out of the stupor, there are villains left and they can escape, Izuku said. While Aizawa blinked, the logic of the situation snapped him out of his initial shock. He looked around. The terrifying creature that was supposed to be his downfall had been reduced to atoms, and the primary threats were currently trussed up in shimmering, indestructible chains. Right, Aizawa grunted, his eyes flashing red as he activated his quirk to ensure none of the nearby low-tier thugs could use their powers to disrupt the bindings. 13. Help me round up the scattered ones in the flood and mountain zones. Midoriya, keep those two pinned. If that mist villain warps out, we lose the lead to their hideout. Noted, Izuku said, while knocking out Shigura Tomura and Kurogiri with a simple attack, and then he helped Aizawa and 13 deal with the rest of the villains, and after 10 minutes later, all the villains were captured. As Izuku's right arm was a bit damaged as he manifested some bandages and put them on as the faculty arrives, Nezu and All Might burst in, finding the villains rose deep in temporary steel cables. All Might stared at the scorched crater. Vaporized, Izuku said flatly. The Nomu is gone. However, these chains and cages will demanifest in approximately 20 minutes. I suggest the police hurry. Nezu nodded, impressed by the cold logic. Efficiency at its finest. Evaluation. As police hauled Shigura Tomura away in diamond chains that were already beginning to turn translucent, the villains stared in hollow terror. Nezu approached. You ended a crisis in 12 minutes, but we must discuss the legalities of portaling a class without a license. Izuku replied, I prioritized lives over protocols. If you want to file a grievance, I can manifest the paperwork now, though it will disappear before you can file it. Back at Class 1A, Izuku portaled to the classroom, meeting a wall of noise. The threat is neutralized, Izuku told the panicked students. Go home, your stress levels are too high for productive learning. Todoroki narrowed his eyes at Izuku's perfectly healed arm. How are you so calm? Izuku replied, emotion doesn't change the outcome, it only complicates the process. And this is where we now jump cut to a week later, and in this week, UA High was not shut down because, well, no one got traumatized from the